Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The Market Open. It is November 4th, 8:48 a.m. We are live once again. Today's going to be a big day. Today, we've got Palantir after the bell, which is going to be very important because it's Palantir. And we'll go through my earnings expectations on what I expect for Palantir and what I think may happen to the stock, regardless of the numbers that we put up. So today, it's going to be a big deal. We got Palantir at 3:30 p.m. I'll be live. It's kind of crazy. Again, we have the election tomorrow. So August 5th happened last time we had Palantir earnings, and like the craziness of August 5th happened in the morning, and then we had Palantir. And then this week we have the election, which is going to be a whole different type of craziness happening this week. But we've also got Palantir. So Palantir is going to be today. That's going to be very important. We got the election tomorrow. We'll talk about that. That's also very important. And then on top of that, you got the Fed FOMC rate cut decision, which most likely there's now a 99.7% chance that the market is pricing in. We will get a rate cut happening this Thursday. So this is going to be a hell of a week. This is going to be a very exciting week. A lot of stuff going on, a lot of narratives at play, a lot of market dynamics happening. We also have a ton of other companies having earnings this week as well. And ultimately, the United States of America will have a new administration, regardless of who wins. And that administration will govern the rest of the country and the trajectory for the stock market. So it's going to be a crazy week to see what we've got going on. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We've got a lot to talk about today as we are starting the market open. Deacon, Sachin, what's up? Benny, Mark, Midwest, Gene, I'm Beneficial, Edgar, Ray, Sanjay. Oh man, it's that time of the year when the market opens 1 hour later for us in Asia. That my uncle, who's in Singapore, texted me today. He was like, is the market not going to be open today? And then he realized, oh no, you guys have daylight saving time. So yeah, for all my people out there in Asia, we are 1 hour later for you guys. Sorry about that. But hopefully, if you guys stay up a little late, then you guys can catch the show. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Yes, daylight saving time has messed you up in Thailand. Yeah, daylight saving time is messing up everybody right now. Even on Sunday, I woke up and I was like, why do it's supposed to be 10 a.m.? Why is it 9 a.m.? So I didn't even know we had daylight saving times, but we do have daylight savings time now. 22 hours trading. Yep, that is correct. We are extending trading across the entire New York Stock Exchange. So now more people will be able to access the markets. I don't know when that goes into effect. I think it goes into effect soon, but now the New York Stock Exchange will be open from, I think it's 11 p.m., 1 a.m. to 11 p.m., something like that. And there'll be a 2 hour break, and then markets will open up for a very long time. Okay, cool. So let's get into it. We got some stuff to talk about. First thing we'll get into before we even start with anything. Here's a tweet that I saw literally 30 seconds before I went live. I don't know how you guys are going to react to it, but I mean, well, let me just show you the tweet. Mr. Dan Ives, a major change in tariffs, harsher stance on China would significantly impact the supply chain. Nvidia, Beijing, retaliatory, Apple, Tesla likely, and slow the pace of the AI revolution. Big tech AI, we view a Harris win as more bullish. Trump win as a net negative for big tech. You know what Dan Ives is trying to do right now? I think Dan Ives is looking at the polls. And based on whatever polls you look at, you could create the narrative that Harris is going to win. And we'll talk about that later. But let's just say he's seeing some data and he thinks Harris is going to win. I think he's trying to change his perception of big tech. And he's trying to get his clients to kind of come to the conclusion that it's okay if Harris wins and you shouldn't sell, your tech stocks because Harris would somehow be bullish. And quite frankly, it's not that hard of an argument to make, right? You could say like, okay, if we're not going to get into a trade war with China, that shouldn't be bad for supply chains, aka that should be decent, even if you increase corporate income tax rates for big tech. Now, again, to increase corporate income tax, you have to have all the Senate, the House of Representatives, and the executive branch go Democratic. I think Dan might be thinking, hey, if that's not going to happen and we don't have a tariff war, then that's kind of net bullish for big tech. So that's the argument he's making there. Again, I think it's a logical argument. I think you can go the other way and say it's logical. If Trump wins, that's good for big tech because he's going to lower corporate income taxes. So even if there's a tariff war, they have to pay less, 3% less in taxes. That's good for the bottom line. But the point is, I think we're going to start to see some analysts come up with narratives to justify being bullish for the markets and for tech, regardless of who wins. And you got Dan Ives right here, to me, kind of putting out a hedge. Essentially saying, you know what, even if Harris wins, that's not the worst thing in the world. And we have to be able to deal with that. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to kind of see how the market interprets that. But you at least have some analysts coming out saying it's not going to be that big of a deal. Sachin says the new 22-hour trading session starts in 2025. Okay, cool. So in 2025, we will be able to stay up all day and trade. People were saying, does that hurt Robinhood? I think I think that makes Robinhood's market more liquid in the 24 hours, right? Because now you have more participants inside of it. So if you want to buy, 20 shares of Palantir at a certain price, the bid-ask spread shouldn't be as narrow if you have Schwab and Fidelity and all these other brokerages allowing you to buy them on the 24-hour market. So although Robinhood won't be the only now, it will create better spreads, which should be good for Robinhood users because they'll be able to, easily access stocks with more liquidity. So that looks like it'll happen in 2025. Anyway, so that's Dan Ives' thoughts. He believes that Harris would be net bullish and Trump would be net negative. He hasn't actually talked about the election for basically a couple months now, but these are his official thoughts, and I guess he's on the side of Harris if you're bullish big tech. Let's hear from Tom Lee, who has been talking about the election for the past couple months now, get his thoughts on the markets, and then we will keep going from there.
Week's inflation and jobs data. It's an interesting time to get some perspective from our next guest, Tom Lee. It says be prepared for volatility. Tom is managing partner and head of research at Fundstrat Global Advisors, as well as a CNBC contributor. Would you say towards the last time you were on, you talked about the Trump trade being pretty strong. A lot of things turned back, reversed. DJT reversed. Bitcoin didn't move into the mid-70s, got into the low 70s. I don't know whether the banks and other Trump trades changed, and all the betting markets certainly moderated late last week, came back a little bit. Do you have a change in your opinion on the election now?
Well, it does seem like over the last 4 or 5 days, the election really narrowed when you look at betting markets or the polls. And I know a lot of people don't necessarily trust polls, but I think the quality and the adjustments the polls have made them more accurate. So I think it is really a toss-up, and it's going to be a very close election. And something our clients are preparing for, because we did a survey last week, 76% don't think we'll have a winner declared election night. And 43% roughly expect it 1 week after. So I think markets are kind of bracing for this period of uncertainty. I think that's why many of the trades have reversed.
We've also heard about some of the trading houses that are not going to be putting any software updates in this week, even some people who want to be here rather than overseas to make sure they're closer on the ground to see what happens too.
Yeah, so I think it's going to be a week where there's going to be a lot of worry. One thing I was thinking about over the weekend, though, is I think the market's fear of uncertainty will peak before, it's very likely it peaks before the election outcome's actually decided.
These signals that we've been looking at, one of the things, I don't know if you read.
Meaning if it takes till November 9th or November 10th to have a winner, Tom Lee basically thinks we would have a decline by November 8th before the election is actually decided.
About it, and I think we talked about it during commercial break last week. One of the things that's happened in the polls is the view that there's a lot more women going to vote than before, but that these signals, whether it be Bitcoin or whether it be DJT stock or whether it be the betting markets, may also all be off, if this is true, on the assumption that actually there is a very small percentage of the people in the betting markets who are women, for example. There's a very small percentage of people who are women who actually trade in Bitcoin, not who own Bitcoin, but who trade in Bitcoin. Very small group of women who are trading in DJT stock. What do you think of that?
I think there's some credence to that, just because we know, like when you look at the Iowa polls, it was really the senior women voters that changed a lot. And you're right, these markets can be narrow, and they're very responsive to changes in liquidity. And I think it's a very tight race. I mean, it's going to be very close. I think anyone who thinks that they know who's going to win is really playing with fate, because I think it's a very tight race.
Yeah,
It's interesting.
I agree. And look, the betting markets went from 60-40 Trump to basically 50-50 over the course of the weekend. I think there's a lot of questions on how that happened, but if you assume the most kind of easy path to the answer, which is that more people started hedging their bets by buying up Harris contracts, which means, more people are kind of thinking that it's going to be closer than ever, then this does seem a little bit more 50-50 than wider than what we thought.
From when polls close too, because we've got I mean, there's a couple here. Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia are all East Coast. So, you know, if you have some definitive answers, they also, you know, supposedly Virginia and New Hampshire are closer than people in the Harris camp would like. So there could be surprises early on.
Just wonder how long it takes when you have so many more people who have voted early or mail-in votes too. Those take longer to tally. So I mean, you might just by default be
like last time.
Yeah. I actually voted last week, and I actually had to wait for a lot of people. I mean, turnout is really what's going to swing this election.
And then there's a number of states, obviously, that, by the way, get the early votes and then don't begin to tally them afterwards. And they, for all sorts of reasons that I would raise some real questions about why they're not tallying them.
Kind of a bummer when we see
sometimes it's written into state legislation.
No, I understand that, but there's a view among those who are cynical about that they're only not they're not counting them until after, so that. And
there are we've seen it.
Except for what if
there's other countries that know that know by the end of the day. There's other countries that know that night, and they've been talking to, you know, we're like a little bit envious looking around.
Yeah, you should be able to count.
Here's the problem: if they were counting them early and it was some secret, because you wouldn't want them releasing what the vote count was early. What if it got out? I mean, that's the problem with starting the count early.
I have not heard that as the explanation for it,
I'm just
and it's
raising
only red states that have done this. So there's you can think whatever you want to think about that.
So other than the election, because the elections, that's sort of what you hear about Wall Street. Elections don't really matter anyway. So if it is gridlock, which we don't know, but more likely, I think the odds are on that too. So you're still bullish.
Yeah, I'm bullish only in the sense that election uncertainty has caused people to de-risk and cash to sit on the sidelines, but the fundamentals have been good. Earnings season's been very good. The Fed is dovish, and I don't think it's going to matter who ends up in the White House, even if it's split Congress or a sweep. I think markets do pretty well either way, so it sets up for a really good rally into year end. But when it starts in November is just what we don't know.
No. So when you look at we were talking about what Buffett's thinking with Apple or what he's thinking with bank. I mean, that you take Apple and a leading financial, and that covers a pretty big range of the markets. And Andrew thinks he's building an arc. Could you really? That wouldn't work. There's too many species to bring on there with him.
I'm just saying he's building a cash arc. An arc out of cash or something. Or is that what he's doing? He may be doing something else. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I know part of it is he's anticipating capital gains taxes could change, so he's taking those gains now. And he's not necessarily having a big cost of money because he's earning 5%. But next year, you know, the cost of money is going to drop, so he'll have some pressure to deploy it.
Okay, so very interesting perspective there by Tom Lee on the Buffett thing. I actually didn't think he would go that route, but you know, one argument is, I don't think it's the best argument. One of the arguments that Buffett's selling stocks, and we'll talk about Buffett in a bit, but now he has $325 billion in cash. That was disclosed over the weekend. One of the reasons might be because capital gains taxes are going to go up, and so he's taking his profits right now. I think more so he's de-risking because he thinks something is going to happen in 2025, and then he's going to deploy capital. But one of the interesting things Tom Lee said right there is that no matter who wins the election, markets will still be bullish because Q3 earnings have performed. And that's kind of been my thesis over the past couple of weeks, which is that if earnings are good, it is very hard to say Trump or Harris tanks the economy or takes the economy up 10%, because, you know, people have jobs, they have money that they're spending at companies, and those companies are reporting earnings. And until that changes, which maybe it does in 2025, then it's hard to imagine the election having that big of an impact, like substantially, on the markets. Now, granted, certain sectors like the crypto trade definitely could get a big impact based on who wins, but the overall market hopefully should be okay. By the way, it does look like Dan Ives is now touting the horn on this Harris's bullish argument. Look at what he said. So not only did he say Harris would be bullish for big tech 5 minutes ago, 5 minutes later, he tweets, would Trump in the White House be bullish or bearish for Tesla? On the margin, we expect EV tax credits to get pulled. That's another reason I'm getting my Tesla right now. And negative for the EV industry, but a positive for Tesla given scale and scope and advantage. Harsher China tariffs, on the other hand, can be a headwind for Tesla in China. So he's kind of saying, look, it can be bullish given Tesla has broader scale and scope advantage outside of the other EV companies if the EV tax credit were to go away, which is right about, like, you know, Tesla still probably survives without the EV tax credit. But harsher China tariffs, on the other end, could be a headwind for Tesla along with Dan's previous tweet right here that Trump would be a net negative for big tech. Very interesting perspective by Dan. I actually thought he would take the opposite angle on this. I think we do know that Tom Lee was a bit more bullish for Trump, but Tom Lee and Dan Ives are pretty good friends. I mean, maybe they talk about this stuff and maybe they agree that, Harris would be actually more bullish for big tech. It's just, I think at the end of the day, it comes down to gridlock, as Tom was saying, is like, do we get the Democratic sweep or the Republican sweep? And that ultimately will determine what ends up happening. Remember, Obama got the ACA passed, Affordable Care Act, because he had a sweep in 2008. Trump got the tax cuts passed because he had a sweep in 2017. So you get one major policy you get to go through if you get a sweep, and by the midterms, the country changes and they get upset and then the sweep goes away. So if we get a sweep, Republican or Democratic, it will be the basis for, what policies ultimately can get passed. So there you go. That's what you got on Tom Lee's perspectives on the markets, and also Dan Ives, which just tweeted this morning. Let's get into Palantir, which is a lot more exciting than the election. We've got Palantir earnings today. It hasn't really caught up to me yet. I feel the jitters, but I don't they're not officially hitting me yet, but I'm excited for it, and I'm nervous, but I'm excited at the same time. So my high level thoughts. So first of all, last night on the Sunday Future Show, I did a long, probably 45-minute discussion on Palantir. Won't go that in depth today. I'll give you my high level thoughts. Overall, I am nervous for the stock. I am not nervous for the company. I believe the company is going to beat earnings. I think we're going to beat 9 cents of EPS. I think we're going to beat $705 million of revenue. I think adjusted operating margins will probably get closer to 40%. I think free cash flow will be similar to the guidance of 800 to $1 billion. If not, they guide up from 900 to $1 billion. I think they're going to raise full year 2024 guidance, not by a lot, but by enough for the street to at least think, okay, the growth is reaccelerated. I think commercial is probably going to grow at 33%. Government's probably going to stay in that 24 to 25% range. I think customer count will probably grow to around 640 customers, which would be 8% quarter over quarter growth. Year over year, that'll be closer to 55%. I think all of these metrics will be good. The one thing I don't know if it's going to be good or not is, what is the stock going to do even after they put up these numbers? So the difference between Palantir and some of these other companies is that I don't think there's a mismatch between the analyst expectations and what Palantir has projected. Palantir has been pretty blatant about here's what we expect to do, and the analysts have kind of taken that as their word. Palantir is going to beat those numbers. They always beat those numbers. They always sandbag. We know that's going to be the case. The question is going to be, given Palantir's trading right now in the pre-markets, where's Palantir? Palantir is at $41.18, down about 1.77% in the pre-markets. Given Palantir's trading at a $93 billion market cap and a 43 times price to sales, will the stock market be okay if Palantir puts up numbers that are good but not great? And if they're great, do they have to be phenomenal for the market to be able to justify this premium? That is what I'm scared about. And that's what I want everyone to get mentally ready for. If there is a world where Palantir puts up numbers that the market's like, hey, this is awesome, but it just doesn't justify the growth that we're baking into the stock, then there's an argument where we could fall 10, 20%, and we have to be able to stomach that. I personally would not be that upset about that. I mean, I get to buy more shares. I'm in this for the long term. I'd rather buy at 30 versus 45 or 32 versus 45. And I also think it's healthy from a consolidation perspective for things to go back down. I think Palantir has conditioned everyone to believe that stocks only go up given this 2-month run. And look, there is a very strong chance I still think the stock could go up today because they could have a blowout quarter and the street could be like, all right, it's Palantir's world and we're just living in it and we got to buy more Palantir. I think that's very possible as well. I don't know if this is the quarter for that to happen. And that quarter might be a couple quarters away just because they're really getting the growth and momentum starting, but that takes a couple quarters, right? Even for Nvidia, you knew it was coming in late 2022, early 2023, but then it actually happened by the end of 2023, and then 2024 they took off. For Palantir, they finally had a quarter of accelerating growth last quarter, right? That was their first quarter where they really reaccelerated closer to that 30% range. I think they will hit 30% top line revenue growth this quarter. They're guiding for 25%. I think they're sandbagging by 5%. They'll get to 30. And then the question is just going to be, can they really beat those numbers? The other thing is Palantir was $23 the day of earnings on August 5th. That's when it went to 29. 23 is a whole different valuation than 42, right? Now S&P 500, all these things have happened and Palantir has gone up substantially. So the question is going to become, does the market allow it to go up even further? And I don't know. I don't know if, we're going to see if we can get that answer. Nicholas says, like Amir said, if we get 2 consecutive quarters of growing revenue per client, it can be a very good day for us. Yeah, that's the other thing. If they can show their average revenue per client goes up as a result of AIP monetization, then that's going to be bullish as well. So like we've got to see that. We've got to see the deals close number go up. We've got to see top line revenue growth of at least 30%. We've got to see adjusted operating margins go up. And if operating margins and top line revenue goes up, you're probably gonna see that rule of 40 start to get bigger as well. It's already at 64. If that can get even stronger, then that's good. There's a lot of metrics they can announce today that will send the stock higher, even if the valuation wouldn't be fully supported by the stock going to like $50. But they can have a blowout quarter. I just don't think that blowout quarter is this time. If it happens, there will be no part of me that's upset. I'll be very happy. But if it doesn't happen, then it's like, all right, this is what we expected. We'll give them some more time. And in the meantime, we get to consolidate shares, which is what I'm thinking is kind of what could play out. 117% net dollar retention would be awesome. I agree. I think we're probably not going to get to 120%, but 117% would be good as well. Kathy has been selling. She sold, I think, close to $35 million of Palantir shares over the past couple of weeks. Probably rebalancing her portfolio and taking some profits there along with Tesla as well. But overall, these are my thoughts. I mean, look, 3:30, we're going to be live. We'll analyze it and go deep into the numbers for the first 30 minutes before we get the results at 4:05. But I do think Karp's excitement and the company's approach to AI is unique. AI Bootcamps gives them a definitive moat in regards to being able to sell software into the enterprise, which is very difficult. If the AI thematic is real and NVIDIA is getting all this demand, the software applications of AI, Palantir is in those top 5 names, if not those top 2 names. And then it just becomes a question of, were they able to execute this quarter? And if they were to the level that the street is pricing into the stock, we're going to have some momentum. If not justify this $40 price, we can expand the multiple. But I do think people need to understand trading at 130 times price to free cash flow, they would have to grow a lot to be able to get the stock to go up outside of the narrative. Because I think the stock could go up on narrative if Karp bangs the table and he's excited and all this stuff. And we've seen this happen after the CNBC interview, right? He comes on and he's excited. And that is a way for stocks to go higher. But another way is actually the fundamentals keeping up with the reality of the valuation. And this is going to be one of those quarters where maybe they show it, maybe they don't. And if they don't, that's okay. I don't expect them to. But I expect them in 2025 to do that. And if they don't, in the meantime, we'll have cheaper prices to buy, which is fair. So from the people I talked to over the weekend, most people are prepared for a pullback because most people, even if you're a retail investor who doesn't spend all your time looking at the markets, even all right, I bought this thing at $10, it turned into 45 relatively quickly. I'm okay with it coming back down and it kind of materializing. A lot of people have taken their profits, sold covered calls. So I think it's one of those things where if we get a 20% decline, the only people that are going to be upset, because I don't think management's going to be upset, because even management who's been selling shares, they know the valuation's kind of up there. We might not be able to live up to that at this moment. The only people that will be upset are the people that started buying in at 38, 41, 42. And if those people are upset, they're going to have to learn how to DCA, or they're going to have to realize that Palantir is, not just some stock that goes up forever and ever. It takes time. It's like a regular company that needs to consolidate, which is fair. So we will see. We will see how it turns out today, but it will be very, very exciting at 3:30. Who's joining the show? I believe Arnie, Amir, Matt Money, Neil, Couch Investor, and maybe one other person might be joining today. And so we'll be breaking down all those numbers at 4 p.m. Now, before we move on from Palantir, let me say the one bullish thing that I think could happen. If we get 40% growth, adjusted operating margins of 40% and 10% growth in customer count, we're going to 50. It's just that simple. And $50 at that level still probably would be aggressive even for that growth rate. But the narrative would be that Palantir is the only software growing AI company in the market. And as a result, they will have a pseudo monopoly on that narrative. And that narrative will get eaten up by institutions, retail, et cetera. And I think we're going higher. So the top line number you want to look out for, essentially, they guided 703. You want to look out for 730 for 30% growth and closer to 765 for 40% growth. And if we see 800 or something, like if we see 800 million or some crazy number, it's going to be wild. So realistically, I'm expecting 730. That's what I would like to see. If it comes in at 725, that's fine as well. But that's the number I'm looking for. And if we get anything above 730, then I think the street's going to hopefully be excited for the level of growth that they're putting up. It's just going to take some time to get there, and that's okay. But it's going to take some time to get there. Amid Bezos is selling billions in shares like it's going out of style. Yeah, so in terms of insider selling, let's talk about that real quick. Jeff Bezos did sell $3 billion worth of Amazon stock on, I think, Friday, November 1st. November 1st was, Friday. Yeah, I was right. Friday. So the day that was probably the reason we couldn't get above 200. He didn't sell exactly at 200, but he sold a lot at 199, 198, yada, yada. So $3 billion worth of stock, 16,354,000 shares is what Mr. Jeff Bezos sold on Friday. And I, ironically, Amazon was still hovering above 200. Like, it was trying to get above 200. You did have Bezos selling at that 198, 199 level. But the fact that it was holding up at 199, even with 16 million shares of downside pressure being sold, was pretty incredible. So we're seeing this as a trend. I mean, we've seen Karp sell, we've seen Jensen sell, we've seen Bezos sell, we've seen Tim Cook sell. A lot of these big guys are taking profits because stocks have gone up a lot, and it's very fair. You can't blame them for taking profits. Nonetheless, they are indeed taking profits, right? And so it's one of those things that if the market's willing to buy their shares, then they have liquidity to sell, and they're going to take that liquidity to be able to sell. How much stocks does Amazon have left, or does Jeff have left? So his stake, if I'm not wrong, is worth 200 billion, 220 billion. So if he sold, I don't know the exact number of shares, but so he owned 8% of Amazon a couple of years ago. I think that number is maybe down to 6%. But he owns basically $220 billion worth of Amazon. I don't know what that is in terms of the percentages, but call it 5 to 6% of Amazon he still has. And so it's still a substantial portion. Remember, Jeff Bezos is the, I think, 4th richest guy in the world. And the funny thing is, that's after the divorce. Like, if he didn't have the divorce, I think he would be number 1, because I think he gave up like $40 billion in the divorce. So he'd be pushing 300 billion if he didn't have a divorce, and he'd be richer than Elon Musk. But, you have to give up some money. So it's kind of crazy. That's a flex to be the top 5 richest guy in the world after divorce. It's kind of crazy. But yeah, Bezos is selling, and a lot of other people are selling as well. Yes, we have HIM's earnings as well after the bell with Palantir. And so we have to see kind of how that plays out. Scott says with a decent margin or a decent earnings, I think worst case scenario, Palantir goes down a modest 3 to 5%. Yeah, I think that's another thing. We could be surprised and we don't see a 20% candle up or down. We could see like a 5% down if Palantir has a good earnings. And I mean, that'd also be a dream scenario in terms of, just like not having the stock collapse, which would put it closer to like, 38, 37, which is not that crazy. Or maybe it goes up to 44, 45, right? Right now it's at 41. So if 38 to 45 is the range, it could be a nothing burger on earnings. And the street could just be like, all right, we're just going to hold our shares. We're not going to do anything with it. And we're going to wait till it, till they have earnings that really show that the momentum is there. Okay, let's go through some other pieces of news that we got in the market. SMCI, very interesting piece of news. Not only is SMCI down right now in the pre-markets, it was down 45% last week. It is down another 4% today. So call it 50% over the past 8 days. Nvidia, which uses SMCI a ton, has begun redirecting orders from Super Microcomputer to other suppliers in order to prevent supply chain disruptions. So even Nvidia now is acknowledging that, hey, SMCI has some stuff going on. Let's go to Dell, let's go to HP, let's go to anyone else who can do this server IT infrastructure for us, especially for GPUs, in order for us to make sure our supply chains are intact. I think the relationship between Nvidia and SMCI has yet to be investigated. And I think a lot of people are a little scared about that relationship. I don't think it's going to affect Nvidia. I don't think Nvidia is cooking their books or anything like that. But it is one of those things where if Nvidia is now directing orders away from SMCI, that means they're starting to get a little bit more skeptical about their company as well. And you'd never want to see that happening because Nvidia was one of their largest customers. And it looks like that is starting to change, at least for now, as SMCI tries to resolve the lawsuits that they're going to have dealing with. So I think for those wondering about if they should buy the dip on SMCI, this is one where even though it has become very cheap for their growth, given it's down 50%, it's just not worth the risk, dude. This one is just not, like, you just don't know. When an accounting firm leaves and says we cannot trust management, there's just no way you can invest in it. There's just no way. You would have to really believe that what Ernst & Young is saying is BS. And maybe there is a world where it's BS, but you would have to know some really smart people that make you feel confident. The average retail investor has to take that on the chin and look at that and be like, yeah, there's no way you can meaningfully say this is a easy company to get excited about. Nvidia is up 1.34%. Why is Nvidia up? Well, for those that missed this news, on Friday at the close, Nvidia was added into the Dow Jones Index, which is pretty incredible. The guys they kicked out was Intel. So they kicked out Intel and they brought in Nvidia. So now Nvidia is one of the top 30 companies in the market via the Dow Jones. And that just means more institutions have to buy it up. And as more institutions buy it up, that is obviously very good for Nvidia because you have more people coming in to have allocation to it. So the Dow Jones is an index of 30 of the biggest American companies, not really focused on tech. It's kind of more so just focused on companies that are staples inside of American culture. And you've got McDonald's, Salesforce, Visa, American Express, JP Morgan, Apple, IBM, United Health, Goldman Sachs. And then you got Nvidia ranking there at number 22, 2.24% of the index, 2.03%. And then you got Verizon, Coca-Cola, Nike, Walmart, Disney, Merck, 3M, etc. I didn't even know Intel was in this index, but Intel has been in this index. And now Intel's out. So you got Nvidia getting in there outside of Intel. Where's Intel stock right now? I think that's obviously very bullish for Nvidia, not that bullish for Intel because, Intel down about 0.5% right here. It was up 7% on Friday. It's like Intel can't catch a break. They had a good earnings. They got up. They gave back a lot of their gains, and they got some of those gains, and then they got kicked out of the Dow Jones, and now they're down 0.5%. So Intel is going to have a longer recovery timeline before, we see that back at $30. But at least the business is stabilizing, and it doesn't feel like they're going bankrupt anytime soon. SoFi down about 1.27% in the pre-markets at $10.90. Where is Hood? Robinhood is at $23.78. I did buy about 400 shares of Robinhood at $23.50 on Friday. So I bought the dip. I don't know if $23.50 is the bottom. If, we get an election that the market doesn't like in terms of the results, could I see Robinhood going back to 20? Yes, I could. I think that's very possible. But I'm engaging in the dip at $23.50. I think, a market cap of $21 billion with $5 billion in cash means you're paying an enterprise value of $16 billion for a company growing at 36% year over year is very cheap with 24% net income margins. Again, earnings sucked because of the analyst expectations, but that does not, to me, signal that this company is not cheap. One thing about Robinhood that is interesting, we got an update last night from it. This doesn't really affect their earnings, but it is important to know about kind of what they're doing. Vlad said 100 million contracts have been traded in less than 5 days on Robinhood's presidential election market. Again, they make about 1 cent per contract, so they made about $1 million, which is great. $1 million going down to the bottom line. That's awesome. However, it's not like, $1 million is that big of a deal. What I care about more is that in 5 days, 20 million contracts a day have been traded. Now, look, I know it's the election, and I know that this is a hype cycle, and after the election, you might not have this type of momentum, but it does show that they can launch a product, their users can adopt it immediately, and they probably growth hacked a lot this week of getting new people to discover Robinhood by using the election as a mechanism to get people's attention, which is what an innovative, tech company that is good at marketing is supposed to do. I mean, instead of letting Kalshi get all the market share, even though Kalshi has a majority of the market share along with Polymarket, Robinhood steps in the game and they get a little bit of market share, even if it's a small amount in comparison to Kalshi, which I think is very smart. And it shows just how prudent they are when it comes to marketing and ultimately doing what they need to do to get people's attention and get people's energy into their product. So I thought that was bullish and I thought that was exciting. And now we'll kind of just see how the market interprets it over the coming weeks. But I thought the earnings were really good. Expectations were, mismatched with analysts. Overall, I think the company's undervalued here, and probably end of year we get closer to 25 as long as the broader market as well. The one bear case for Robinhood, but not just for Robinhood, for the broader market, is are we topping? And if we're topping at 571 on the S&P, and I saw some charts over the weekend, there were these doom accounts that were showing oh well, this looks like we're topping. It's just like, I really hope we're not topping, bro. Because if we're topping right now and this is the top of the market and it's like November 2021 where that was the top and you either got out or you were stuck holding the bag, it would really suck. It would really suck. All of the fundamental data outside of the technicals that some accounts come up with to try to justify why we're topping right now, to me, doesn't feel like we're topping. I know valuations are a little stretched, but it is not 2021 type of valuations. And companies that are not, Robinhood missed by 1 cent on EPS. The street was down 20%. That doesn't happen in a overinflated, bubbly market. Like to miss by EPS by 1 cent and for the stock to drop 20%, that means that the market is like not tolerating any nonsense in regards to not hitting your numbers. And for Palantir today, we're going to see what happens as well. And I think that's a healthy market at the end of the day. So I don't think we're topping. I think jobs are good. I think there's money in the system for now, and people have the ability to allocate Q3 earnings. 80% of companies have beat on both the top and the bottom line. And if they've missed, it's been a slight miss. Again, for Robinhood, it was a 1 cent miss. And that was because of a regulatory accrual fee they had to pay, which is why they missed on EPS. Like companies that have not performed on a sort of small, minute level versus companies that have performed. And those companies that have performed have beat on the top and the bottom line in a really exciting way. The companies that really sucked got punished really badly, like TMDX, right? They missed on the top and the bottom very badly. They got down 30%. As you can see right here, 134 to 79. But there have been very few of those companies this cycle that we've seen so far. Maybe we'll see more happening this week. We've got Airbnb, Rivian. We got a bunch of companies reporting. But as of now, we haven't had horrible companies with just bad misses. If you guys remember in 2022, Meta was missing on the top and the bottom line. Google was missing. Nvidia was like all these companies. I remember I was at work and I saw Meta go from 320 to 240 within 2 minutes because they missed on a couple of their numbers. Like we just haven't had those earnings. All of big tech demolished earnings. Google, Microsoft, Apple, Meta, Amazon, all of them crushed. We've got Nvidia coming up in about 2 weeks, but even Tesla crushed as well. All of them crushed. They did an incredible job. They showed that they had the juice to be able to put up the numbers that were important to justify their multiples, if not expand their multiples, at least justify them. And now you've just got to get through this election. And whatever we see in this election is going to be the basis for how the market moves forward. But companies put up their numbers. And I think that's the most important thing we could ask for so far. We also hear about $6 trillion waiting on the sidelines to jump in. Correct. There are $6.5 trillion on the sideline. I think Tom Lee did make a good point as well. Tom Lee was essentially saying, hey, people are afraid of the election. And because they're afraid of the election, they are waiting for that $6.5 trillion to allocate. And until we get answers, there's not going to be any allocation, which I think is fair. So today, my gut feeling is that today is a red day. We're going to see probably the S&P go down. I would say another 0.5%. And if I'm wrong on that, I'd be very happy. But I think going into the election tomorrow, it would be prudent for people, particularly fund managers, to probably say, hey, this is too much volatility. We're going to take some profits and just be safe. And we'll get back in if we get another opportunity. And I think that would cause some downside. Now, does that make sense for the average retail investor? I think it depends on your personal situation, right? Like if you have a long-term trajectory on Palantir and you have a $20 average, I don't think trying to sell at 41 to try to buy back in at 20 makes sense because I don't know if we're going back to 20. And if we go to 30, but you sold at 20, you're still buying it at a higher price, right? Versus just DCAing at 30, having an average of 25, and then just having more share allocation. But if you bought it at 38 and it's at 41 today and you're afraid it could go down below 38, then you got to ask yourself a question of, hey, maybe I should take some profits right here because I just don't know what's going to happen with Palantir. So I think it's based on personal situation, but do I see a world in which 2025 is like 2022 where everything falls 30% or some stocks, 70 to 80%, therefore getting out right now, AKA the top is like, what is the best strategy? I don't personally see that because the earnings are too good. And Bezos can sell all the shares he wants. If a company is able to grow AWS at 20% year over year compounded, $27 billion a quarter, and have adjusted operating margins of 11% on top of their retail business, there's going to be buyers for that stock. There's a very big world with a lot of big pockets. And, Bezos was there for a long time. If he wants to offload, there will be people willing to buy if the numbers are good. So as long as the numbers continue to be strong for companies, there will be liquidity. But the moment that changes, which Q3 earnings has not been an example of that, like starting to reverse trend, then I think it'll be hard to justify people getting really excited to get out of these positions. Amit, do you see Chewy added to the S&P Midcap 400? Did that happen already? Or are you asking me if that could happen? I think that could happen. Chewy added to the S&P Midcap 400. They're growing well enough. I don't know if they were added yet. Chewy, they're up 5. Oh, I think they were on Friday. They were up 5%. Let's see. By the way, Roaring Kitty has sold out of Chewy completely. For those that were wondering, there was a 13D filing that came out on Friday. Yeah, Chewy set to join S&P Midcap 400. Okay, so that's why Chewy was up 5%. Yeah, well, it's up 5% right now in the pre-markets. There you go. So if you got Chewy, congratulations. Roaring Kitty is not with you on the trade anymore, but it's now in the S&P 400. Where is GameStop, by the way? We haven't looked at this in a while. GameStop is down 8.8%. So the GameStop story is pretty much not played out at all this year. You had one spike in May to what was it, to $50 or to $80, $60? Yeah, 64. And then it just never came back. And I'm very proud of myself that I did not chase GameStop. There was a lot of euphoria, but I told myself, nope, not doing it. And, I created a lot of bag holders this year. The other problem is we don't know if Roaring Kitty is in this thing anymore. So a lot of people that are in this because of Roaring Kitty, if he's not in this anymore, kind of sucks. But GameStop right here, $10 billion company. They do have $4 billion in cash. The financials aren't crazy. It's just, do you trust management to be able to do something with the money that they have to, pull things together? All right, we got the market open in about 2 minutes, and we will see how things open up. So I think the narratives for today that we want to look out for is obviously Palantir. How's the market going to interpret Palantir? Down about 2% right now in the pre-markets as we get into earnings. I think Bitcoin is one of the things we have to look to. The polling data. There was a very popular poll in Iowa. I think it's called the Des Moines Register that has predicted like 5 of the last 6 elections. They predicted Trump in 2016. They predicted Biden in 2020. Right now, it's predicting Kamala. And that's another reason I think the odds swung in Kamala's favor on some of the betting markets because of that Iowa poll. It's just like a really treasured poll by a lot of people in Iowa, and they pay attention to it. If it starts swinging towards Kamala, does that send Bitcoin down? Potentially. We're already seeing Bitcoin below 72,000, which we were at last week, maybe because the betting markets have changed some of their odds, or it could be just because people are selling Bitcoin because they're afraid of the election, right? So there's a lot of things that could be happening right here with Bitcoin, but I think that's something we have to keep an eye on today. And then Nvidia. Now Nvidia has its first full day of being in the Dow Jones, or at least the news is out of it being in the Dow Jones. So the SMCI news getting worse, but Nvidia having some really good news about it joining a new index. I think that's another big narrative we have to look at today. And we got to see kind of how Nvidia is interpreted by the market this morning. All right, here we go. It is once again time to open up these equity markets. Big day, big week. Thank you, everybody, for spending it with me. Monday, November 4th, 9:30 a.m. The stock market is now open. Wake your ass up. Here we go. Palantir Technologies, PLTR, is down 2.08% on the day, $41.05. Again, we have earnings after the bell today. I'll be live at 3:30 p.m. and we'll see kind of how this plays out. 4 p.m. we should get these numbers. 41.14 down about 1.8% right now. Robinhood 23.82 down about 1/3%. It looks like we might have a chance to break through that 23.90 range, and then hopefully we can get into the 24s. We'll see what happens for Robinhood. We did get to 23.05 for Robinhood on Friday. So I think I got like 10 shares at $23.10, but most of my shares were bought at $23.50 on Friday. But that hopefully was the bottom. We'll see if, that bottom gets traced back down into the 2250s. S&P is green, 571, TMDX 8241. Chewy is up 6% after being included into the S&P 400. Bitcoin 68,500. We've got JetBlue down about 2%. We've got SoFi at 10.99 down about 0.4%, or really at $11. I think SoFi holding 11 is really bullish for the next month, and then, or at least until the rate cut. And then after the rate cut decision, we'll see if SoFi can use that as a tailwind. But SoFi right here at $10.98, kind of teetering on $11. Apple at $221. Apple was at $235 last week, so now Apple's at $221. So Apple definitely took a little bit of a hit. Ken says, how big of a buying opportunity will we be provided today? Let's see if Palantir actually gives us a really good buying opportunity, or if it stays flat and we don't really have any movement. The funniest thing that could happen for Palantir earnings today is that it just stays flat. It doesn't go up, it doesn't go down, and the numbers are just the numbers. And look, the implied volatility is closer to 20%. So I'm expecting a big move up or down. But if it just stays still, maybe that's something that could play out as well. Amazon 196. Amazon is down 1% because of probably the Bezos sell that people are now figuring out. Google giving up all of its gains, dude. Google's giving up pretty much all of its earnings gains. Google's at 182. Now Google's back down to 170. I think it was 167 the day of earnings, or 168. So really, Google just gave back everything from earnings. Look at Meta as well. Meta was at 609 on Wednesday. Meta's at 559. So you're all right. We're seeing the market fall. Where's Hood? Hood at 23.77. Palantir 41.41. S&P somehow is green, even though big tech is getting hit. The Qs can't be green. But yeah, the Qs are down. The Qs are down because big tech is all down. All of big tech is down. Hold on. Let's go to the Max 7. Besides Nvidia, Tesla's down 2%. Amazon's down 1%. Google's down 1%. Meta's down 1.2%. Microsoft's down 0.5%. And Apple is down another 1%. You've got Nvidia holding up big tech right now because of that Dow Jones news, but everything else is going down. Everything else. I think I think people are taking profits before the election. That's it. Very simple. It's one of those days where, it's logical for people to take profits before the election, but it is going to hurt a lot of people's portfolios if you're heavy in these names. Because, some of the paper gains kind of just disappear as people take profits. Meta right here at 558. Meta is really taking it on the chin, dude. Meta, I mean, we talked to Steve on the market close last week. He thought Meta should be 650 based on the earnings they put up. I don't know if 650, but I definitely think closer to 600. I mean, those numbers were incredible. Their highest net income ever at $15.7 billion off of a $40 billion revenue base. It's just incredible. But Street's kind of selling it off right here as we get into this election cycle. Let's see what else is happening with the semis. Mixed bag. Nvidia's green, Broadcom's green, TSM's green, Micron's green, Dell is green. Dell probably getting some momentum from SMCI. Dell was up 10% last week. So a lot of that SMCI money went to Dell. SMCI is down another 7%, which is just insanity. But SMCI is getting hit. SMCI is absolutely getting hit. TLT is up. Interesting. So the market thinks that rate cuts will finally reduce yields, because that hasn't happened over the past 2 months. TLT is up about 2%. Long TLT, if you believe bond yields are coming down, so people will sell off bonds, makes sense. But a lot of people thought that going long TLT after the Fed rate cut was the play, and they got burned. If you bought it at 100, you're down to 92, right? Like that didn't happen. Maybe the market's starting to think that yields will actually start to come down substantially post 25 bips. Robinhood down about 1.27%. S&P is now red, flat on the day, but it's down about 0.09%. Nvidia barely holding on to that 1% gain that it had. So you might see Nvidia go red. Pretty much everything's red. PayPal's a little green by up 1%. Oil is green. Chevron and ExxonMobil. Where's oil prices right now? Oil's up 3%. Interesting. That could be another reason why the market's down a bit. Oil is up 3%. Oil is up 3%. Okay, so oil up 3%. That's why the oil companies are getting some love. Boeing's down 1%. They did resolve the strike last week. Starbucks is down 1%. Celsius is flat on the day. Tesla is now down a nasty 3%. Tesla was at almost 270. Google's down 1.4. Yeah, in unison. Algorithms, the market, the Illuminati, whatever you want to call it, they're selling off stocks, folks. They are selling off stocks. Roku's slightly green. Twilio is slightly green. Dell is green only because of SMCI. Hims is green going into earnings. Joby is a little green. Gold and silver are up. Of course, gold and silver are up. Is Iran firing missiles again? I don't think so. I don't think that's what's happening. I think this is election volatility. I don't see any crazy news. I don't see any news, dude. I feel like this is election volatility, at least for now. Gold is up right now. Bad day for Palantir earnings again, dude. Somehow Palantir always reports on the day where shit's hitting the fan. And today, shit is indeed hitting the fan. Enphase 85.44. That's up 2.3%. Why is Enphase up, dude? why the fuck is Enphase up right now? Are they thinking Harris is going to win and we're going to have more solar energy? Is the Trump trade unwinding? Is that what's happening right now? Is that why some of these stocks are going up? Is China up? Yeah, China's up. I mean, China should only be up if you think Harris is going to win, right? Because Trump's not good for China. I mean, theoretically, China's stimulus shouldn't be impacted by Trump, even though it will if there's a ton of tariffs. But I feel like China's up because people are getting bullish Harris. Where's Baba? Baba at $99, 1.6%. Baba's up as well. This is interesting. SoFi's down 3.5%. What the heck? Holy crap, dude. What happened to SoFi? I mean, the only argument I could say is that people are going short financials, which is why they're selling off SoFi. And obviously, if Trump wins, that's very bullish for financials. But if Harris wins, that's not bearish for financials either. So it's kind of like a short-term reaction to where you think the sector trade is going to be, but it's not necessarily indicative of what the sector trade is going to be post-election. Grinder's green? No way. I'm telling you guys, bro. Is Grinder green? So I'm talking about, baby. 1340. That's what I'm talking about. I came to the conclusion last night on the Sunday Future Show. I was like, look, I'm not going to buy Grindr and take the financial risk of actually like owning the stock yet. But if it goes up, I get all the bragging rights because no one on the internet has been talking about Grindr except me. So if it goes to 25, 30 and I don't have any, I don't need the physical gains to brag about Grindr. I get to brag about it just because I'm the only one talking about it. So that's my agreement with you guys when it comes to Grindr. But if it gets to like $9, I will buy it. I just at 13, I don't like that valuation at all. But if it just keeps going up, I'm taking the bragging rights. I'm doing it. Meta's at 561, Google at 169, getting a little bit of green candle right here, recovering. MicroStrategy as well, 228. MicroStrategy is probably not in the best situation right now, given Bitcoin fell from 72 to 68. Again, Saylor wants to collateralize the entire company to create an instrument of convertible debt that will allow him to buy more Bitcoin and never have to pay back the debt because he would just issue shares of the stock at a higher price, which would dilute shareholders, but they shouldn't care if they're up a lot on the stock, and the debt issuers would be able to have the gains of MicroStrategy stock over the 0.75% interest they would get paid, which they would probably prefer as well. That is his master plan, but that plan requires Bitcoin going up. And right now, Bitcoin's taken a little bit of a hit from that 72,000 level. The miners are getting hit. CleanSpark down about 4%. Microsoft down 1%. Where's Coinbase? Coinbase as well, down about 1% on the day as the Bitcoin stocks get hit. ELF is up 3.11%. See, why is ELF and Enphase up? Like makeup and solar energy is bullish post-election or something? Like, what is going on here? It's a really weird dynamic we're seeing as the market opens. Qs are down 0.5%. TLT is up. Again, when people sell off bonds, when people buy into bonds, that has the yield go down. So TLT is a bet on the nature of that bond dynamic. When people sell off bonds, the yield goes up. So right now, TLT is a bet on what will happen after those rate cuts, which again, right now, I think it was 99.7 last night. It looks like it might be 100% in terms of the probabilities. It's 96.2. Okay, so it went down a little bit. So it's a 96.2% chance we get a 25 basis point cut, 3.8% chance we get a 50 basis point cut. Looks like we're getting a rate cut. It looks like we will get a rate cut. Prominent election predictor made predictions of Harris wins, caused betting markets to shift, probabilities to shift dramatically. Stocks are reacting. Yeah, there is a couple of key people. Alan Lichtman is one of the guys who's predicted every election in the past, I think, 35 years correctly. He's predicting Harris is going to win. Now, look, you may think that's BS, but there are, parts of the market that do take certain sources as the gospel. And if he says Harris is going to win, you probably have some people also thinking, all right, so it's more likely than not that he's going to be right, just given his history. And you might have stocks reacting to that as well. Let's do this in the chat. What is your gut feeling on who's going to win? Not who you want to win. Who do you think is going to win, Trump or Kamala? Put it in the chat. Who do you think is going to win? Not who you want to win, but who you think is going to win. Because as of now, based on a lot of different polls and media narratives that have been coming out in terms of like predictors that have been correct in the past, including that Iowa poll, they're saying Harris. Now, granted, this also happened in 2016. A lot of them were saying Clinton, and we saw what happened. So I just don't think I don't think we can trust anything. I think we're going to have to really see how it plays out. And hopefully by tonight or by tomorrow, we'll have an answer to this. Yeah, it's even kind of split in the chat, 50-50, Harris or Trump. I'm beneficial, says Robinhood. Yeah, to be honest, that's the real answer, dude. I don't care who wins. Just get these stocks to go up. That's it. The next Fed meeting is on Thursday. And so we will get a rate cut on Thursday no matter what. We're definitely getting a rate cut. Question is going to be, if the rate cut is 25 or 50. You guys say do a poll. Okay, let's do a poll. So again, the poll is who do you think will win, not who do you want to win. Who do you think will win? Which is a little different than who do you want to win. Okay, put the poll in the chat. What else do we have? The real winner is Bitcoin. I don't know, dude. I don't know if the real winner is Bitcoin, bro. At this point, I feel like Trump's got to win for Bitcoin to be bullish. I think if Harris wins, it's not like Bitcoin's going to be bearish, but I don't know, dude. Gary Gensler's not leaving if Harris gets elected. And one of the things you need for Bitcoin to get some adoption is for Gary Gensler to get out of there, which Trump said he would do. So like, if you're bullish Bitcoin, I feel like you've got to be bullish Trump. But if he doesn't win, I don't know. And that would suck because that hurts Robinhood, that hurts Coinbase, that hurts MicroStrategy. Like if Bitcoin collapses 20%, that's not good for anybody. So it's one of those things where it's like, I hope if Harris gets elected, it doesn't mess up, Bitcoin's long-term, early short-term trajectory. Doug says long-term Bitcoin will be observing the liquidity. That is true. More Fed spending ultimately means that liquidity is good for Bitcoin. It's just in the short term, the reaction is going to be, potentially muted if they don't get the type of reaction they want for the election. Robinhood, a little bit of a comeback right here at 23.87, fell to 23.54. Is SoFi also coming back? SoFi still stuck. It was down 4%. Now it's down 2.7%. So a little bit of green candles there from 1064 to 1080. PayPal is indeed green. PayPal 77.95. PayPal did fall 10% last week, which was nasty. And then you got Nvidia. Nvidia coming back as well. Look at that. All right. So you got some green candles. Nvidia was barely up 1%. Now it's up 1.5%. Wow. SMCI. SMCI was down 7%. Now it's down 1.4%. Huh. Looks like that was a little bit of a, was that a little bit of a 935 scare? That is incredible, dude. 7%. Look at Robinhood. It might be 23.94. Hold on. Where's Meta? Is Meta still at 558? Meta's at 562. Huh? 935. Looks like there was a little bit of a sell-off. Instead of that 1030 slam, we had it at 935, and now things are kind of recovering. Palantir as well, down 1.17. At one point, it was at 41.08. Now it's at 41.18. Celsius just went green. Starbucks is down at 1%. It was down almost 2%. Interesting. Reddit's green. Where's the S&P? The S&P was flat. The S&P is now green. Look at that. The Qs should be down 0.3 instead of 0.5. Qs are basically flat, dude. Qs just went being down 0.5% to being down 1.5%. Or sorry, 0.15%. That is so weird, dude. That is very weird. It looks like they were trying to shake people out at 935. Something was trying to shake you out because for stocks to go down all at once at 935 and then just make that U-turn going up, unless this is a head fake, is pretty freaking interesting. Rivian as well is up 3% right here. Rivian 1045. Where's Tesla? Tesla's still down about 3%, 241 on Tesla right now. SolarEdge is up 5%. Yeah, I think the market's getting bullish solar before the election. And maybe that's because of Harris. I don't know. But that is weird that Enphase and SolarEdge are getting some love. News from China stocks soon is update. Yeah, China does have a meeting today in their central bank. So China will be announcing some things. Maybe that's the reason the market's getting a little excited right here, but I don't know if that's going to affect U.S. equities that much. One news on China, Tesla did sell 68,280 China-made EVs in October. That's down 5.3% year over year, but their insurance registration numbers are up at their highest levels in China in history. So their sales, their delivery numbers in China at 68,000 is down 5%, but their insurance registration numbers is the highest it's ever been. Maybe that's also why Tesla's down. Maybe because that number's down 5% year over year. And that's why. But I think Tesla's moving kind of more so algorithmically with the market. I don't think that Chinese statistic is the reason it's down 3% here. Is Hood green? Are we green in the Hood? Are we green in the Hood? Hood is yep, there you go. 23.98. We are green in the Hood. Now we got to get above 24 and kind of chill out at that 24 level. See if we can get there. And then hopefully make our way back into those 25s. So, honestly, I think the consolidation is reasonable. Robinhood was up a lot at $28, probably needed a little bit of a breather and took a violent breather down 20%. But if the dip gets bought here, then we know that the market is long-term pretty bullish and that these one-time drops are not that serious when it comes to their trajectory. And they're probably, normal at the end of the day. A lot of times this stuff happens, especially when stocks are up a lot. Rocket Lab 1108. Rocket Lab down about 2.96. Oklo is down 8%. Oklo's still up a lot, but it was at almost $30 last week. This one's getting hit right now at $19. Oil stocks are up. Dow Jones is down a little bit. IWM kind of green a little bit. Little green on IWM. The IWM trade has just not played out, unfortunately. IWM small caps has unless you got in the 150s, this has really not played out. And I think a rate cutting cycle like going into 2025 has to play out for IWM, because I don't know how big tech continues to expand their multiples without the market broadening. But the market rally has broadened. You can argue it has broadened outside of big tech. It just hasn't broadened to IWM or to the small caps as meaningfully as I think some people expected it to. And I think 2025 is when, hopefully that is what we see. But for now, that trade has been not the best trade for people. IWM can't move based on short-term rates coming down. Long-term rates have to come down. Yeah, that's fair. Where's the 10-year, by the way? Where's the 10-year? 10-year, 4.2. All right, so the 10-year's down a little bit. I expect that 10-year to be closer to 4% after the rate cut, but the election, I think, is going to have a lot to do with it. So 64% of you in the chat say that you think Trump will win. 36% of you say that you think Harris will win. So basically 60-40 on what we think is going to happen on this election. Amit, do you have any updated stats on institutional and retail ownership of Palantir? So I believe it's still 45-55, 45 institutional, 55 retail. And that number might have changed, but as of like 2 weeks ago, it was 45-55, which is up from institutionals that were at 40% a year ago. So it's not up a lot, but it is up a decent amount, 40-45. It's not a crazy gain, but the S&P inclusion kind of helped get a lot more institutions in. Palantir, 41.31, chilling out at that 41 level, not getting hit too badly. Whereas Intel is down 2.85%, basically back to where it was post earnings. SoFi 10.79, Tesla 2.42. Hood, there you go, above $24, not bad. $24 on Hood. Apple at 221, Amazon 196, Google at 170, MicroStrategy 227, Archer Aviation at $3.20. Google, wow, 169. Google getting hit now, a little bit below that 170 level. United Airlines is down today. Silver and gold are up. And that's what you got. Qs are very close to going green for the day. What is the exact IV for Palantir? I actually don't know. I don't know what the exact, I'll have to look it up. I think it's closer to 15%. I was rounding up to 20, but based on the last couple of earnings, the moves have been pretty dramatic. So, and I think last time we got a 20% move. Yeah, we got a 19% move on the last earnings. So that means that when you take the average of what it is, we are closer, I think, to 20%. But I'll get that exact number for you, and I'll see what the IV is. Price to sales on Palantir is at 40. PE is at 246. Market cap 92. Price to book is at 23 currently, based on the price that we have right now. It's 11%. Okay, so if it's 11%, then that means, let's just make a range for it. 41 times 0.11. We're looking on the high side of 45.50 if it's a good earnings versus the low side of 36.50. So if it's 11%, you're looking at 36.50 to 45.50 as your range for Palantir, which is reasonable. 36.50 is not that crazy, and 45 we were there a couple weeks ago. So I don't think that would be crazy. Now, if we actually do get a 20% move to the upper or the downside, then it's going to be a little bit more crazy in terms of closer to 50 or closer to 30. So I think we're going to have to see. Doug says, good thing we had a pullback last week before today's earnings. Yeah, I actually like that Palantir went down from 45 to 41. Way better than if Palantir was at 45 right now. Remember when we were at 25 before Q1 earnings in May, and then we fell to 20 because there was no reason for us to go to 25? There's probably no reason for us to be stuck at 45. So being at 40 is a bit more reasonable. And that means if we get a pullback, 40 to 36 is not that crazy. But also maybe we don't need to get a pullback, and maybe we just stay flat at 40. So I kind of like that we're down from 45 to that $41 level right here. DJT, let's take a look at that. That thing has been hit last week as well. DJT, $30, down 1.8%. This thing was $54. It was a $10 billion market cap. Now it's a $6 billion market cap. So the market is obviously thinking that there is a potential lower chance of Trump winning, which is why DJT is going down a bit right now. One news on Elon Musk and Nvidia. Nvidia is looking to invest in XAI, and it looks like that will be happening potentially going into next year. That to me is pretty damn bullish if that does happen. Why is that bullish? Well, I think XAI needs more funding. Obviously, they want to compete with OpenAI. Nvidia already invested in OpenAI at the $157 billion valuation. So if they hedge their bets and invest in XAI, which is, one could argue, having a lot more potential than OpenAI, then that would be pretty bullish. So all this money is going to go back to Nvidia. We know Elon's going to be buying more GPUs to stay competitive with OpenAI. So if Nvidia even invests like $1 billion or $500 million, they're going to get that money back through GPU sales. So I think that's very smart. And if you have two really, really big companies that are making models like Grok and OpenAI, ChatGPT, along with Meta, you've just and Gemini, you've just got a lot of demand over the next 5 years. Theoretically, if the GPUs get better and better and better for competition within the hyperscalers for Nvidia's products. So I think this is actually something he really should do because it's propping up XAI and it's keeping them alive, and it's giving yourself a market for more GPUs, which is important. AMD is, where's AMD right now? AMD is down about 0.55%. That's the problem I always have when it comes to buying AMD over Nvidia. It's like AMD is not doing anything like what Jensen's doing with OpenAI and XAI. It's like Nvidia is literally creating a market for themselves, a multi-$100 billion market for themselves by investing in these companies. AMD is not doing that, bro. AMD, and they're not growing at the level that Nvidia is growing at. So it's just hard to justify AMD's multiples when you look at what Nvidia is actually doing right here. Jensen's mom did not raise an idiot. That is correct. Jensen now, I think, is worth close to 100 billion. Jensen Huang net worth 118 billion. Michael Dell is worth 107 billion. That's crazy, right? Jensen and Dell are worth over 100 billion. By the way, Sam Altman's stake in Reddit now is worth $1 billion. He owns like 12 million shares, and Reddit was up like 50% last week. So Sam Altman now is a billionaire off of Reddit outside of his OpenAI stake. Is Hood pumping? Are we actually pumping in the Hood? What do we got? All right, 24.17. Not bad. Not bad. It makes sense. It makes sense. 24.19. So I did buy 400 shares at 23.50. The reason I got them at 23.50 is because when we went to 23.05 on Friday, either we were going down below 23.05 to 22.50 or we were going up. It was one or the other. And Hood had to make a decision at that moment. Either we were collapsing below 23 and we were going to 22.50, which has been a very strong level of support, or we were going back up. And within an hour, Hood basically decided that it would go back up. And that's why I started buying at 23.50, because I was like, okay, if we're not going below 23, which still could happen, but if we're not going back down there, which is a big support, so I think 22.50 would have been a really good buy. If the market's not going to let us get that opportunity, then 23.50 seems to be a reasonable spot to at least take a bet. I did buy 200 shares at 24, so that was a little early on Wednesday post earnings, but the bulk of my dip was bought at 23.50, which hopefully is the bottom. We'll see. But I think now it's going to depend on this election and how the market interprets it. Rocket Lab 11.23, MicroStrategy 2.28, and where is Palantir? Palantir at $41.39 right now. Okay, cool. Let me see this. Nvidia also invested in small A companies like SoundHound. Yeah, that is true. Nvidia only put $2 million into SoundHound. That's why when people get excited about SoundHound, I'm always confused. I'm like, Nvidia didn't invest a lot of money in them. Like, it's a very small amount of money, but Jensen did touch it, which is why people think are excited. Suzanne says, I think Harris will win, but that's not who I voted for. I think a lot of people are feeling the same, Suzanne. I think a lot of people that voted for Trump are looking at what's happening and they think, look, although I voted for Trump, I do think Harris might end up winning. I don't know, dude. I really don't know. Like, at this point, it's just, I think the betting markets are full of shit. I'm going to say that. I think the betting markets are absolute nonsense. I think we need a way bigger sample size going into 2028 if we're going to use these betting markets as a reasonable form of a methodology to gauge what's happening. I think all the polls, a lot of them are full of shit. I don't trust any of the polls. I just don't know what to believe. The sentiment across the country is not super Trump or super Harris. I really do think it's closer to 50-50. And if it is closer to 50-50, then it's going to come down to one big state. And one of those big states, to me, is Pennsylvania. And if Pennsylvania goes to Trump, I think he's probably winning. If Pennsylvania goes to Harris, I think she's probably winning. I really do think that's why Elon's spending the past couple of weeks in Pennsylvania, because that is going to determine the majority of kind of where the electoral vote swing. When you really understand the electoral college, and I haven't studied it that in depth, but I've studied it a decent amount, there's only a couple states that really matter. There's only a couple states that kind of determine the trajectory of where things are going to play out for. And Pennsylvania is one of those states, because if Kamala's not flipping, Texas and Trump's not flipping California, then you have these small states in between that are going to determine everything. And Pennsylvania, Nevada, Arizona, Colorado, Ohio, these are the states that really matter. The media is 95% for Palantir. So I will agree with you. There's definitely a mainstream media bias for Kamala Harris, but alternative media like Joe Rogan, Theo Vaughn, all these independent podcasts, they have leaned heavily towards Trump because Trump has agreed to actually do those podcasts. So one thing this election is going to determine as well is, does mainstream media have the influence that it had over the past 20 years? Or does alternative media, for example, the All In podcast, have the type of influence that the mainstream media can't fight with anymore? Because Trump has done pretty much every podcast you could imagine. Like he's done podcasts that I like Flagrant, Andrew Scholes. He's a famous comedian. I didn't expect Trump to do that podcast. Trump did that podcast. That got 1 million views. So if Kamala loses, one of the arguments will be that she refused to do a lot of independent podcasts and she chose to go with 60 Minutes on CBS. Do people care that much about 60 Minutes? I don't know. Does the far majority of America care about 60 Minutes, or do they care about Joe Rogan? We're going to find out on this election cycle. She also was on SNL. I didn't watch the skit, but I agree with June. Some people did say that Harris on SNL was pretty cringy over the weekend. Look, do people really watch Saturday Night Live? Like, do you guys watch it? Put in the chat. Do you guys actually watch? Do you guys turn on your TV and watch Saturday Night Live? Because I don't know a lot of people that do that. I mean, I see, some clips people watch on YouTube, but do people really watch that show is the question. Or do people listen to Joe Rogan? I mean, this election is really going to be a referendum on what type of media currently is getting people's attention. Yeah, I see a lot of you saying no. I've tried watching SNL, okay? It is not funny. It's just not like the punchlines. Robin at 2433, Palantir 4150. The punchlines don't punch for me. Like, I'm just going to go out on a limb here, okay? I'm going to say it. This is the most egotistical thing I've said ever, but I am funnier than SNL. Someone clip that. I am funnier than SNL. SNL, like, my stupid jokes on the market open get more of a chuckle than SNL. I'm sorry. I'm saying it. It's just not funny. It's not funny, dude. Like, it's just not funny. So if SNL doesn't have the level of humor that it has, then what are you watching it for? Their political takes? No, it's because it has to be funny. And their humor also isn't edgy enough for me, dude. I'm a guy that needs a bit of edge in my humor. I need you to be pushing things to the limit for me to laugh. If your punchline is like if your punchline has no like consequences for what you're saying, which is the whole point of like comedy, and if it's funny then no one cares, then like what's the point, So I think SNL just doesn't take, and they can't take any risks because they have a lot of advertisers, and those advertisers will get really upset if they say anything a little edgy, and so it's like, all right, well, you're not really going to get that many people to laugh then. Thank you for agreeing that Amit is funnier than SNL. I appreciate it. I really appreciate it. Chat says, Amit, give us your best bit. No, I can't. Now I can't do it under pressure, dude. It has to be natural. I'm not rehearsed like SNL. Okay, when it happens, it happens. When it happens, it happens, and you guys will know, and you guys will naturally laugh when I give my natural bit because it'll happen in the heat of the moment. And I'm sure we've had plenty on that. We need to document all the funny moments I've had on this show before the end of 2024, and we need to like put a compilation clip of them. I think I'm gonna try to do that this year, because we've had some really good moments, dude. We've had some really freaking good moments. And I think that compilation clip would be funnier than anything SNL has put out in the past year. I really believe that, dude. I really believe that. SNL did have good skits in the 90s. In the 90s, they had some good skits. But since then, I feel like shit has just not been that funny. So yeah, I'm gonna try to get that compilation together. I think that'll be funny. 2440 on Hood are we at 2440? Oh wow, 2445 on Hood. Look at that. Not bad at all. Up 2%. Not bad on Hood. Not bad. SoFi still down about 1.7%. Bitcoin 68,400. Robin at 2440. Palantir 4150. Palantir again was down at 4108. Now it's at 4150. So Palantir also making a little bit of recovery here as well. Remember when you said you would liquidate your balls? Exactly, dude. So for the people that are new to the chat, this is what I'm saying. This is why I'm saying it can't be rehearsed. It is so natural because I'm so naturally fucking funny, bro. When I said I had to go pee and I said, all right, guys, I'll be right back. I have to liquidate my balls. I didn't realize pee is not in your balls. Pee is in your bladder. There's something else in your balls. And so obviously the interpretation of saying liquidate your balls was interpreted in a fundamentally different way. And when I was peeing, because that's what I went to go do, and I had my phone in one of my hands and my pee device in the other hand, because you guys know I take my phone to the bathroom. I saw the comments on the stream because I was still on the stream, and everyone was like, what did he say? And I was like, oh, that's not correct. That's I meant to say bladder. Not those moments, bro. Funniest shit ever. And it's better than anything SNL has put out. I will stand on business when it comes to that claim. It's just true. It's just the truth, dude. Hey, in a needle stack classic. See, this is another one. You know, I haven't used this in a while. I need to get back to using this. I have so many moments I sometimes forget about them. I need to remember hey in a needle stack. Did you guys notice? So someone texted me last night. They were like, hey, Amit, is idiosyncratic your new favorite word? And I was like, damn it, bro. Like people could tell when I have a new word and I start using it too much. Like remember broader was one of my words. Writ large. I haven't used writ large in a long time. Now it's idiosyncratic. I need to like eliminate idiosyncratic and get a new word. Because like when I find a word, I fall in love with it and I use it like 50 times a show. And then people get tired of it. I need to get a new word. So I think we're going to have to retire idiosyncratic. But it's a hell of a word, right? Idiosyncratic. It just makes you sound smart. Like, wow, this is so idiosyncratic. It's like damn, this guy's fucking 200 IQ or something. Look at that word, right? But we need to get a new word. 41.51 on Palantir right here. Robinhood 24.45, up about 2%. Not bad. Tesla 243. Tesla making a recovery. Tesla was at 240. Now it's at 243. Where's Google? Google at 169. And then where's Meta? Meta's at 563. Meta moving up and getting some momentum as well. Yeah, fundamentally, I used fundamentally too much as well. There's some words that I just use way too much and then I have to move on. The PayPal Q1 moment. How did I forget about that, dude? We got to make this compilation clip. There are so many moments in 2024 that were pretty decent. Okay, what other headlines do we have going on? What other headlines? So we talked about Palantir, we talked about the election, we talked about the rate cutting cycle. Let's see any big headlines. Oh, Buffett. So we didn't talk about that too much, but Buffett has $300 billion in cash. So put in the chat if you think there's any stock that he's eyeing. I think that ultimately he's just waiting for a crash. Maybe we get it, maybe we don't. But Buffett is indeed hoarding $325 billion of money. He's probably collecting 5% on that in T-bills right now, which is fair. But eventually, you would imagine that he uses this money for something. We just don't know what he's going to be using that money for. At least not for now. Oh, Nvidia is above Apple in terms of market cap. Nvidia is the largest company in the world right now. Yeah, because Apple's down 2%. Nvidia's up 1%. Apple, 3.37 trillion. Nvidia is 3.36. So Apple literally just took the lead. If Nvidia goes up like another 0.5%, then Nvidia will be in the lead. So you got Nvidia and Apple duking it out for number one. Facebook plans to use AI to identify young users on Instagram who are lying about their age and automatically switch them into more restrictive privacy settings. That's a good use case for AI. It's not a bad use case. That's actually good. If they're not lying about that, that's a decent use case for AI. We talked about the Tesla China vehicles. Affirm is announcing their first international expansion with the launch of its buy now, pay later service in the UK. Affirm. Shout out to Affirm. Affirm. Is Affirm up on that news? I would imagine Affirm is up on that news. Affirm is, 2.5%. Look at that. Not bad. Affirm getting into the UK. It seems like every financial services company looks to the UK as like their next sector of growth because London is very finance oriented. And maybe the regulations are not as difficult as the regulations in other places as well. We had Tanner, who was on the show the other day, talked about how Vlad said it's really hard to expand Robinhood into Canada because every province has a new license they have to get, which is just like way too much. And that becomes hard for, any type of expansion into the maple syrup country. Shout out to Mr. Derek Wall for another 20 gifted memberships. Again, I think he's on a mission, even though I tell him to stop sending these memberships to get everyone on this channel, 44,000 people to become members. Appreciate you, Derek. Thank you for the gift to 20. This is going to be a big, big day for Palantir earnings. He did text me this morning. He bought some Palantir here. So Derek is, I don't know if you could say bullish. I guess he's just kind of going to see what happens right here at $40, and we'll see what happens with Palantir later today. But thank you, Derek, for the 20 gifted that we got right now. Arnie says, this is why 99% of the great tech companies are in the US, 1,000%. This is why the tech companies are in the United States. Nick says, I'm leaving Gmail after 20 years of using it. Is that because you found a better service that can do email, or is that because you're fed up with Google? Because there are a lot of other email clients that are popping up that are pretty damn excited. TJ says, I listen to both. I love Olin Podcast and The View. You know, that's interesting. Someone who loves Olin Podcast and The View. But I do think, again, mainstream media and independent media, they're going to be fighting it out for who ends up winning this election. That's going to be very, very important going into this year. Okay, let's see what update we have from the street. Those are kind of the main headlines. I don't have any other big headlines right now. Again, Nvidia is in the Dow Jones. That's a big deal, but that kind of happened on Friday. We're seeing the effects of that right now. Intel got kicked out. Nvidia is currently in. Okay, let's get an update from the street. Let's see what some of the suits are saying and what they're thinking about the trajectory for today. Here we go.
Live as always from Post 9 of the New York Stock Exchange. Take a look at stocks here ahead of a busy week. S&P 500, little changed right now. The Nasdaq's down about 0.1%, and Dow's down 84 points. We've got a lot to talk about. How about treasuries, which we did see a move overnight. So I'm seeing some buying with yields a little bit lower for a change. The 10-year note yield 4.27. There's going to be a lot of treasuries sold this week. Of course, the election and the Fed meeting. We're 30 minutes into the trading session. Here are three big movers we are watching. Shares of Tesla down for a sixth straight day. New delivery numbers out of China showing the EV maker sold just over 68,000 vehicles, and that is down more than 5% from last year. Big shakeup in the Dow 30. Nvidia and Sherwin-Williams will be joining the exclusive group. Intel and Dow Inc. getting the boot. More on why later this hour. And a tough trading day for the nuclear power-related names. Amazon's deal with Talon Energy rejected by federal regulators. More on the fallout coming up, but some big moves in all of those stocks.
It'll be a busy week for data. Let's get some durables here with Rick Santelli. Hey, Rick.
Hi, Carl. Yes, good. Happy morning. Monday, we have factory orders and durable goods. Durable goods are actually final reads. We toss mid-month reads. Factory orders expected down 0.5%. Come in as expected, down 0.5%. That's the weakest level since down 3.3, and that was in June. Last month, though, had a significantly larger revision. So I'm going to have to change what I just said. Last month now goes from -0.2 to -0.8. So now that -0.5% is comping to last month. If we look at factory orders, take out transportation, it improves rather markedly to up 0.1. So we could see where the big drag was. And if we look at the revision there, much smaller from -0.1 to -0.2 last month. Now, durable goods, as I said, we are going to toss out -0.8, replace it with -0.7. And of course, that would be the lightest since August when it was down 0.8. And last month, of course, none of these numbers are very good with respect to what we're looking at down the road. And there has been some major slowing. If you take
So market's not really reacting to that news right there, even though the factory orders were slower than expected. Overall, the market, I mean, S&P is green right now. It doesn't care too much. Again, those numbers, I don't think are that big of a mover in regards to what we're looking at. We're looking at more at job numbers for like the real big movers. But the job numbers we already got, and it was, you know, relatively decent. I mean, I know 12,000 versus 100,000 is not the best, but again, the market already knew what they were pricing in to not be, you know, not expect given the hurricane. So it looks like the numbers were not that big of a deal. Amit, what happened to the lady who was going to be on the show? She will probably be on next week. So I was talking to her yesterday. We are likely going to be having a new contributor joining the show who's going to be talking about tech and AI. So next week, you guys can expect her on the show, most likely, probably on either Thursday or Friday. But yeah, I want to get more contributors on the show, and she'll be probably on going into next week.
Everyone asks us, who's going to be in the White House? Well, we turn to them and say, listen, you don't need to know who's in the White House, because if you look at who controls the Senate, that's where the favorable returns come from. And a GOP-controlled Senate over a 2-year period, those are some of your better returns. And we think that's because the GOP is more focused on the economy. They're more business friendly, lower taxes, less regulation. And so it's much more friendly to the equity market. And that's the most important thing. The other stuff is just really hard to predict. And I think will come down to the wire.
But you think the historical trend of S&P up 6 months after any election, it still makes sense?
It makes sense. And what we also have is we have a Fed easing cycle. So typically 12 months after the Fed starts cutting, you do see equities up. And so now we have some certainty with the president. We know who's in Congress, and we have the Fed lowering rates. And that's a pretty good thing. As you were talking about, the economy's not bad.
So what do you make then of the moves we're seeing, for instance, today, the reversal of the Trump trade on the dollar and treasuries? I mean, there are things like tariffs, which make this one a little more unique, and you don't need Congress to do.
No, that's true. I think what we're seeing today is just a little bit more uncertainty. Everyone was very positive the Trump trade was going to happen and Trump's going to be in office. Some of the polls that we saw out of Iowa changed that. So you saw the markets tighten up, and we're just having we're pricing a little bit more uncertainty. And I think that's what's happening with the rate market. That's what's happening with the equity market.
What if we don't get a result? I mean, that's the other warning that I'm reading in all the research notes of how long it would take to really see a market reaction, how the market would take that uncertainty.
Not good. So if you go back to 2000, I think we're off about 4% in the first couple of days. I think we're down double digits, but by December we had it resolved and equity markets started to go higher. So it won't be good, but it's not clear to me that this is going to be, I think things are going to swing all red or all blue. I think the states are going to be very close, but the Electoral College may not be. I just don't know whether it's going to swing red or blue.
Lizanne, do you agree with the idea? Buy stocks no matter what happens, who wins the election?
Well, I think I totally agree with Chris that if it's a contested election and drawn out, I think that's a volatility driver. I think that's probably the easiest call to make. But I think there ends up being some sort of relief rally in the aftermath of an actual decision. We know there's been a lot of holding off on, whether it's holding off on hiring or holding off on firing or holding off on CapEx. And I think you relieve some of that uncertainty and maybe see a little bit of opening up in terms of the outlooks coming from companies, anything that they were holding off on as a result of the election.
Lizanne, I remember going into this reporting season, one of the worrying threads was that we were going to start to get some year-end concerns, commentary, qualitative statements about 25. It certainly hasn't been reflected in the aggregate beat so far, right?
Yeah, so you have had a slight trending down in terms of the beat rates, and you've seen a tiny little movement in fourth quarter estimates, which are still pretty healthy relative to where we are in the third quarter. You have seen a big trend up in third quarter. We're running at about an 8% blended growth rate right now versus an expectation of 4% coming into this. But as is been the case for the last few years, I think analysts are sort of keeping the out estimates a little closer to the vest from a time perspective. During reporting season, they might make adjustments to the next quarter, at best the quarter after that, but they're not really moving estimates that much, say a year out. And I think that's somewhat just due to general uncertainty, but a lot of companies not going back to that kind of precise cents per share 4 quarters out guidance, because more and more companies you're hearing saying that's not how we run our business. And I think that is something that started to happen in the early part of the pandemic when we saw a record-breaking number of companies withdraw guidance altogether. I think they're...
Oh, we got someone calling into the show, folks. We got someone calling into the show. Steve, you're live on the Market Open. How are you?
Matt, how are you?
Doing very good. How's your morning been?
Trying to catch up on emails. Normal Monday grind between meetings and emails.
Did you have a good breakfast?
They forgot to put ketchup on my wrap, and it wasn't the same.
Dude, I hate when that happens, when they forget the cream cheese or something stupid, right?
I got 3 eggs with peppers and onions, salt, pepper, ketchup, and they forget the ketchup. Like, how do you forget the ketchup? I don't know.
Dude, I went to Dunkin' Donuts the other day. I asked for a turkey, egg, and cheese on a English muffin. I leave the drive-thru. I look in the back. It's a bagel with no cream cheese. I was just like, what the fuck? How did they mess that up? It's not fun.
I mean, my first question would be, why are you going to Dunkin' Donuts for what you just ordered when you live in the Northeast and can go to a deli?
That's fair.
But regardless.
That's fair. Okay, so Palantir is earnings today. We got a bunch of people with me on the Market Open today. They love your input. They love your analysis on what to expect. So I know you're busy, so I probably have like 10 minutes with you. But Palantir, what are you expecting going into the bell today?
I don't know. I mean, I'm hoping it's going to be a blowout quarter. I just don't know how much of a blowout quarter it needs to be for this not to go down.
I imagine you think they need to put up like 40% growth for this sucker to not get kicked, right?
I don't know if they need to put 40% growth. I think they need to at least have a 3 on the first number. If they have anything but a 3, if they have a 2 in the first number, I think this goes down. I mean, it's also about guidance. If they have like 35% growth and they guide and have more U.S. corporations signing up to their platform and they really play up AI theme, maybe it stays where it is and even goes up. But it's got to be a strong quarter for it to keep this valuation, my opinion.
Are you nervous at all about what happened to the stock, or are you welcome a dip?
No. Scared money doesn't make money. I don't get nervous about
I
these
like
things.
that. I like that. Yeah, that's right.
Like, what's there to get nervous about? Stocks go up, stocks go down. Like, unless you need the money and you're planning on selling today or tomorrow, or you're playing this as a short-term trade, it's an investment. I mean, I think this gets to $100. I just don't think it's going to get to $100 for at least 4 or 5 years.
Right.
What happens in the interim doesn't matter. I'm not selling it off and then buying it back because I don't want to pay the taxes on it now. I'd rather have everything be long-term gains and only pay taxes one time on it.
Right. That's fair. Election is tomorrow. In general, how are you feeling?
I can't wait for it to be over.
I agree. Dan Ives, I don't know if you saw this today. Did you hear what Dan Ives said today?
No,
you're going to love this. So first of all,
listen to what Tom Lee said.
Yeah, but forget Tom Lee. This one's a little, for you, this is going to be interesting. You love Dan Ives. You're a fan of Dan Ives. Here's what he says. I'll just read the last sentence. I won't read you the other paragraphs, but he says, big tech AI, we view a Harris win as more bullish, Trump win as a net negative for big tech. His logic is China, tariffs, supply chain, Beijing retaliation, etc.
I disagree.
Wow. Okay, so usually you don't disagree with Dan Ives. What is your disagreement here with him?
I am not saying that the Harris administration won't be good for big tech, because I think both administrations will be good for big tech. I just disagree that everything's going to go to shit if Trump gets in. So I think it's going to be fine for big tech either way. I think that the concerns about supply chains and everything else, it's not. I don't think it's a concern.
You don't think tariffs would be an issue for big tech at all?
No, I really don't. I really don't. It's a negotiating tool, and I don't think it's going to be bad. And the only thing that would make me change my mind on that front is if they do, because there's rumblings about repealing or going after the CHIPS Act in some fashion. So if they do that, then maybe that would have some impact, because now if you repeal that and you stop investment on the fabs and Intel doesn't get that capital, then we're just even more dependent on Taiwan Semi. And that's a horrible thing. So I really hope that doesn't happen. And that's not because I'm an Intel shareholder. I just would love for more things to be made stateside.
Yeah, no, I agree. I definitely think we have to invest in the United States for that. So ultimately, I think you're of the assumption that whether Harris or Trump wins, markets are resilient.
As long as you get gridlock in Washington, I think we're fine.
Right.
And I think it's looking like that. No matter who wins the presidency, I think the Republicans are going to keep the House, and I think the Democrats will keep the Senate, which means there'll be some level of check and balance. So other than whatever the party can push through on executive orders, I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of gridlock and just fighting for 4 years. So it's just more of the same.
Okay. That is fair.
We'll see. I mean, we'll see what happens. I think the most interesting thing to me this election cycle is how little the mainstream media means to anything.
So we were just talking about this. Let me get your perspective on this, because this is important. So Kamala Harris has done 60 Minutes, The View, yada, yada. Trump has done Joe Rogan, Theo Vaughn, Olin. Do you think this election will be a referendum on which type of media, independent or mainstream, has more influence?
No, But I don't think either one has much influence whatsoever. I think this election, the majority of people are going to vote the way they're going to vote, no matter what shows people did. I don't know if many people changed. I think the biggest thing would be RFK joining forces, and anybody that was going to vote for him potentially voting for Trump. I think that that's going to be the biggest story if there is a Trump victory. But I think going forward, the mainstream media is going to be in a very difficult situation because the numbers are the numbers. You can't dispute how many views CNN, MSNBC, or Fox gets versus Rogan, Theo Vaughn, Flagrant, All In, Patrick Bet-David. And I think that you're going to see tomorrow, my prediction, the streaming parties that are going to happen. I think Patrick Bet-David's streaming party. I think the All In streaming party.
I'm having a streaming party.
They're going to get so many views. While I love you, you're not going to compete with them. They're going to get so many views that, except for CNN, because they have a phenomenal interactive map that really digs down county by county. It's really good coverage. I think people are going to be surprised how many people opt to listen to Patrick Bet-David and his guests and the All In guys. Because quite honestly, I would rather listen to the All In guys discussing as everything unfolds in real time than watching Fox or CNN.
Yeah, I agree.
And
I'd rather
think
listen
that
to
this
them
is
as
going
well.
to be a big shock to everybody, and I think you're going to see a shift over the next couple of years. I mean, think about this. How can CNN, as a Warner Brothers Discovery shareholder, my question is, how can CNN validate the large overhead that they have for the views they get compared to a podcast with four guys that isn't even turning monetization on YouTube?
It's pretty wild. It's pretty wild.
And I think you're going to see more. I mean, look at Megyn Kelly. Look at how many views she gets. Look at Bill O'Reilly. I mean, they get a ton of views.
But that's my question is like, if you're an independent voter, do you think you've been swayed by the Megyn Kellys of the world over CNN, right?
I mean, I think if you're an independent voter, you probably watch less Fox, CNN, and MSNBC, and you gravitate toward everything I just named, from Patrick Bet-David to Megyn Kelly. And I think that the YouTube platform, I mean, you can see it in the numbers. It is astonishing how many people are picking up their media, or they would rather hear long-form conversations by intelligent people than listening to people just screaming at each other on the three big news networks.
Right. Are you gonna join me tomorrow on my streaming party?
No, I will not be joining any streaming parties tomorrow. I will be watching everything from my couch, listening to All In, and probably just.
No, but why won't? But people are gonna. Look, we might not have 1 million people like Patrick Bet-David, but we're gonna have people that would want to hear your perspective. So
I don't like talking about politics. Everybody wants to know who I'm voting for. Everybody wants to know. Well, I'm an independent. I don't like discussing politics. There's no political party that truly aligns with what I think. So.
Okay, are you voting though, or have you voted?
I have not voted yet.
Okay.
And my plan is to get up at 5:30 in the morning and go vote. If that happens or not will depend on how long the line is.
Okay.
But the polling station opens at 6. It is 3 blocks from where I am, so I am planning again there at 5:30. Hopefully the line is not too long, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I went a couple of days ago, and it was like it took 2 minutes. It was so quick. So hopefully it's.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is where my early voting was, it was about a 1.5 to 2 mile walk, and there's really no parking over there, and I didn't feel like taking a subway over, so I did not go early. But it's going to be interesting, and I think the worst part is nobody's going to be happy because, well, let me rephrase that. Half the country is going to be happy no matter which side wins. And I think the best thing that can happen is a blowout in either direction. I don't think that if it's a tight election, that's good for anybody. I think this needs to be decisive, and I think this needs to be an absolute blowout.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a blowout, though. That's the problem.
I don't want to hear about fraud, that. Like after tomorrow, I don't want to see political ads. I don't want to hear about it. Like I'm just hoping it is a blowout and everybody can just move on.
All right, last question for you. Nvidia, Dow Jones, what does it mean to you?
Nothing.
Okay.
I mean, is the Dow Jones even relevant anymore?
I mean, dude, there's people buy the index. It's not like it's irrelevant.
I don't know. I followed S&P and the NASDAQ. To me, the Dow is just a number. I mean, I don't know. I'm not. The S&P is the real indicator for me. So.
All right. So
and I think that's because most total market funds and most index funds are S&P funds.
Yeah.
And the most money goes in S&P funds, and that's why I could care less about the Dow.
Okay, so final question for you. Palantir gut feeling, up or down today after earnings?
Down.
Okay.
Look, it is priced so high. If it was at 33, I would say if it has a really good quarter, it goes up. It could go up $4 or $5 a share. I mean, think about what really has to happen for it to go up $4 or $5 a share from there.
We definitely have to have 30% growth no matter what for that to happen. So I agree.
Yeah, if I'm putting money on it, I think there's a better chance it goes down than up. Not saying it can't go up, but they got to get everything right. Like this is Volpe with bases loaded and 2 outs, and he has to hit a home run or the Yankees go home that day. Like they have to hit a freaking grand slam right now. They can't hit a 3-run homer. They got to hit a grand slam.
What is a home run?
I know that you know what a home run is, so don't even try doing that.
What do you mean by bases are loaded? What type of what is this? What is this terminology? I don't understand.
It's called baseball, and I know that you know this stuff. So
a grand slam? What are you talking about? What is this? I'm just
kidding. 4 runs.
I agree. It's got to be. It's got to be a home run.
Against my better judgment, I took a pretty big position in Walker Buehler cards over the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, look, I agree. It's got to be a home run. It's got to be a grand slam, and hopefully it gets there. But if it doesn't, we get to buy it cheaper. So it is what it is.
And I think that's the biggest thing. Look, retractions are healthy, sell-offs are healthy, and if you liked it at 38, and if you were buying when it got included into the S&P in the mid to high 30s, and the quarter is good and has a good outlook, yet the shares go down, you should like it even more at a cheaper price.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
I agree. I'm not a trader. So to me, day-to-day movement is whatever. And I know a lot of people don't want to hear that, but I mean, unless you want a really big tax bill, I don't know.
No, it's the truth, dude. If we get to buy Palantir at 33, I will be more than happy to have more shares than having to buy it at 45. And if it drops for a reason that is just, the stock ran up too much and needed a breather, then sure.
You want to hold it anyway for a couple of years.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah, agreed.
I think the more important things would be Nvidia's earnings.
Well, we got 2 weeks until those, and that'll be important.
2 weeks until Nvidia. And look, you got some sleeper companies out there. I am still convinced Cisco is a sleeper company. It's been treading water. I am still convinced this is a sleeper company. I think that there's going to be a lot on the security side that changes over the next couple of years, and a lot of companies are going to be redoing their infrastructures. And Cisco has been transforming their business into a subscription model business instead of purely hardware. There's a lot of exciting things, and they have an incredible balance sheet and cash flow.
Okay, so let's do this. 30 seconds to end it out. I'm going to give you a name of a company that's reporting earnings this week. You can give me 3 answers: up, down, or no comment, because you might not know about the company. All right, Airbnb.
Sure. I don't know much about them.
Okay, Rivian.
I mean, I know nothing about Rivian.
Cloudflare.
Ooh, I made a lot of money on Cloudflare.
I know you did. You made a lot of money on this. I know
Ooh. I mean, I don't follow them anymore, but here's what I will tell you. Some of the smartest people that I know in the tech industry love Cloudflare. I mean, love Cloudflare. So I think it could be up. I think that they are doing a lot of good things from what I know about them, and it's an interesting company.
Okay, 2 more. Pinterest.
Ooh, that's a sleeper. That's potentially a sleeper. I wouldn't be surprised if they go up, especially with Snapchat going up.
Okay, and Hershey's.
Ooh, price of cocoa is still high, unfortunately. I've been following that.
Wow, it's at 178. It's actually taking a hit this year. Yeah.
I like Hershey's. For Hershey's to really really make a big comeback, you need two things. You need the price of cocoa to come down. You need the price of oil to stay lower. So I think you can have a good 2025.
Okay.
As long as we have good.
Okay.
metrics.
Actual final question. Do you have any thoughts on Peanut the squirrel?
No.
Okay, good. Neither do I. But they wanted me to ask you about it. So
No, we're not getting into those.
dude, I don't even know about this peanut thing, but everyone's like going crazy up here.
I know all about it because I live in New York. I don't want to get into anything about it. Keep it to stocks.
All right, Steve.
But hey, Salesforce, man, don't sleep on the
I know you did call when it dipped. You were bullish on Salesforce, almost at 300. I'll give you that. That's correct.
Don't sleep. This is a company that companies are not getting rid of, and you're going to have a lot of upselling with their AI ability over the next couple of years. I think this is going to be a very interesting time we're living through.
All right.
It's just, what's the next Palantir? That's the real question. What's the next Palantir?
That's a hell of a question. We got to figure that out.
Everybody keeps telling me HIMS. I don't get it.
Bro, I mean, look, HIMS is growing like crazy. I don't know if they're the next Palantir. That's a hell of a statement. But yeah, they're a good company and they're growing. I just don't know if they're a tech company like Palantir, you know?
Yeah, interesting. Right. Well,
thank you, Steve.
Today,
I'll talk to you today after
earnings.
We'll see what happens.
4:15?
4:05. I mean, if you want to join, I'll send you the link, but if you can't, then
what time's the conference call?
Probably 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock.
Send me a link. I will probably be in a car potentially, but yeah, maybe I'll hop on afterwards when I get back home.
Okay, sounds good.
All
right, Steve. Have a good one. Talk to you later.
Later.
Dude, that story is pretty wild though, right? About me going to Dunkin' Donuts. I asked for a turkey, sausage, egg, and cheese on an English muffin. I'm driving. I'm like 3 minutes out from the drive-thru, and I look inside the bag, and it's a bagel with 0 cream cheese. Like, I went back, and I was just like, it was so annoying because I had a meeting I had to get to too, and I was just like, guys, can you I was not going to tolerate that. Like, you know, some people take whatever, I'll eat the bagels. Like, dude, there wasn't even, if there was cream cheese, I might have ate the bagel. There was no cream cheese. It was just a flat bagel. I was like, this is ridiculous. So sometimes when they mess up in the drive-thru, it's just so annoying, but happy we got to fix that. SoFi at 1106 right here, up 0.18%. SoFi goes green. Hood 2450, up 2% of the day. 2456 it topped out at for now. 2447 right here. SoFi green as well. This is great to see. PayPal as well. 7760. PayPal's up. Square should be up. Square is up 1.72%, and you've got Bitcoin still below 69,000, which is what we're saying. So there are a lot of delis in New Jersey. There's not that many near me, though. I'm in like a suburb where there's not a ton of delis, but you are right. There are a lot of delis, and we need to replace those over Dunkin' Donuts. Dude, I have an affinity towards Dunkin'. I've gone there my whole life. It's just one of those things. I want to own a Dunkin' one day. Like, I want to own a legit franchise of Dunkin'. I've been there my whole life. So I don't know. I like Dunkin'. They're not a public company anymore. They got bought out a couple years ago in 2022. They were a public company, but then they got taken out by a PE firm. So now the only way to go long coffee to an extent in America is Starbucks. You got SoFi right here at 1107. So SoFi turning green. That's nice to see. Palantir also trying to make its way back to 42 at 41.77. Let's get a poll in the chat and get your guys' perception as well on Palantir. Palantir up or down post earnings? Let's see. Up or down? Let's see what you guys think on this one. So Steve said down. If I had to default, I probably would say down, but I do think there's a world in which they could go up. But the down also might not be as down as we think it's going to be, which is fair. Amit, where did you find Steve? You know, ironically, Palantir was the reason I found Steve because we were on a Twitter Spaces one day and Steve joined. And I don't even know who set up the Spaces, but someone made Steve a speaker. And then Steve said something about Palantir. And this was back in like late 2022. And then I asked him a question. And you know how Steve sometimes he won't really give you a response to the question, or he'll like give you a one-worded answer. It's like it depends on the mood that he's in. So when I said, what do you think about Nvidia getting into the Dow? He was just like, I don't care.
like I asked him a question on that Twitter Spaces, and I think he took a pause, and he basically gave that type of an answer. I was like, who the fuck is this guy, bro? What's his deal? And then I got to talking to him more and more and more, and then we just ended up becoming good friends. But yeah, it was Palantir. Palantir connected us. That's what made it happen. 70% of you say down. Wow. Everyone's so bearish on Palantir. No one has any faith that CARP can take us to 50. 70% say down. Look, I mean, stock's elevated right here. If we go down, we go down. But I don't think anyone would. I really don't think people are going to care that much, dude. If you've been in this story for years and you, as Steve said, you're in this for the next 10 years, it's going to be a great opportunity if it does go down. I mean, one of the things we have to worry about is if it goes to 50, and, you know, I would definitely want some more shares. I mean, I don't want to buy it at 50. I'd rather buy it at 34. So that's another thing to worry about if it actually does gap up so dramatically. Then it's like, all right, now you've totally re-rated what we think the company could look like. Okay, cool. So that's what we got on Palantir. SoFi going green is really good to see. SoFi holding the momentum. Let's check on those SoFi options and what they're worth right now. SoFi options are still up 130%. So we're still up 4,600 on those options, which is nice. Robinhood again, 24.45. Palantir 41.80. Yeah, pretty much getting a little bit of momentum to the upside on these stocks. And Nvidia right here at 1.37%, which is not bad either. Bitcoin's crashing. Where's Bitcoin? Bitcoin, yeah, I mean, it hit 68.1. Now it's at 68.4. If we can just hold 68.5 to 69 going into the election, I think that would be bullish. And then if Harris wins and we still stay up on Bitcoin, I think that'd be really bullish, because then the market's like, we don't care if it's Trump or Harris. And that's like just good to see, because you don't want Bitcoin just being decided based on the president. So if Harris does win and Bitcoin is flat, if not up, I think that's pretty damn bullish for the overall cycle of Bitcoin to not be contingent on a Trump victory. But we'll find out in about 48 hours. So yeah, I'll be live. Look, I know there's going to be a lot of people live on election night. For those that join, you know, we'll just be hanging out. I mean, I'm sure PBD and Olin, those are great podcasts, and if people want to go there, that's fine. Maybe we'll stream some of their stuff here and there and we'll watch it. But it's one of those things where I want to track the election like second by second. And the best way to do that is being live, right? Because if I'm just sitting on my couch, it's like not, you know, then I'm not as organized at like actually seeing all the news. And so I want to have 3 screens in front of me. I want to see what's going on and I want to keep up with it. And hopefully provide some commentary that's reasonable. And I think Matt Money, Chris, Carlos, and Doug from the chat will be joining. So we'll have a crew and we will break down what we think is happening. It'll be kind of crazy, dude, state by state. Because, okay, so here's one thing I don't know. I don't know if the election betting markets are open during the actual election, right? Because if it's open during the election, which I think it is, and that means like if Nevada goes to Trump or Pennsylvania goes to Harris, like the odds are going to be swinging like crazy, right? So unless they close it right before the election starts, which I don't think they do, then it's going to be the swings in the betting market are going to be wild. And I think that's another reason it was really smart for Robinhood to launch the betting market, because people are going to have Robinhood open on a screen if they bought any contracts on Robinhood. And that's just going to be more user engagement of people using Robinhood to kind of track what's happening in the betting markets. Kalshi's going to get probably a majority of that market share, but it's good for Hood to at least have some market share there when it comes to tracking the election. When will you have the first results for different states? I think we're going to get results by tonight, dude. A lot of the mail-in ballots and early voting is being counted tonight. So we're going to have some, not like state results tonight, but we will have some voting that's in by tonight. And so I think coverage realistically starts tomorrow around 6:30. And by 7:30, you're going to start having a lot of states getting called. But tonight we're going to have an inkling of understanding what states are going which direction. So around 7 p.m. Eastern tomorrow is when we should be looking for it. What time is Palantir earnings today? So Palantir earnings is at 4 p.m. EST. So for the UK people, that is 9 p.m. in the UK. For Germany, that's 10 p.m. For Italy, that's 10 p.m. as well. And for those that are in Singapore, that is going to be 5 a.m. in Singapore. And if you're in India, that is going to be 2:30 a.m. in India. So I imagine people will be waking up across the world for these numbers. The Palantir is one of the only companies outside of Tesla that can really get the whole world to pay attention to their earnings. Even if you don't own Palantir stock, you got tons of people that just want to know. I mean, dude, there are so many bears on Twitter that are just getting ready to put out their tweet of Palantir being down 20%, like, because they don't believe that Palantir should be at this valuation at all. And if they get to do that and they want to brag, I'm like, you can brag all you want. At the end of the day, if we get to buy it 20% cheaper simply because the multiple got too high and the stock came down, then I wouldn't be upset at that at all. But you're definitely going to have some people that are going to want to take victory laps if Palantir falls. To me, I'm just like, you know what? If Palantir falls and we get a better opportunity and the thesis is intact, then that is not an issue at all to me. GAAP net income for Palantir. Some people have been asking how much profitability we're going to have. I think we're going to be closer to 150 million. We were at 134 million last quarter. So I think that should be good. Again, we did sign a $480 million contract with Maven. That's a big thing. Customer count was up 41% last quarter. I expect that to be up around 40% as well. So closing in on 640 customers. And then again, top line growth. This is the most important thing. As you can see, Q2 2023, this was the worst quarter when we were at 13% growth. We're now at 27%. That number gets to 30%, I think the market will be very excited. And, you know, maybe the stock doesn't react going to the upside, but the market itself will be happy. And that's the most important thing, is if the business outside of the stock is performing, which is really what a lot of people care about. And so we will find out at 3:05 p.m. or 4:05 p.m. Let's see what happens. All right. I think that's it for me, folks. I will be back at 3:30. It's going to be a very, very exciting and interesting day. It's one of these moments, you know, it's one of those things with Palantir earnings. I think in 10 years, this community will be around. And I think we're going to remember these days because, you know, like Tesla in 2013, 2014 didn't really have a big YouTube community because YouTube wasn't that big back then. Palantir has grown as a YouTube community. And so I think, you know, in 2034, we're going to be looking back on these earnings in the early days when Palantir was trying to get to 30% growth and trying to, you know, like justify these multiples. And it's going to be big memories that we're all going to remember. It's all documented, which is amazing, as Zocold says. And, you know, it's one of those things where regardless of what happens to the stock, we're as a community, we will get through it together if we have to go through a downside, and we will celebrate together if we go to the upside, just like we did on S&P 500 inclusion. But the point is we're doing it together, which is important. And it's special. Again, I mean, I literally met Steve through Palantir. I've said this time and time again, but the greatest thing Palantir has given me, and the greatest thing Palantir will always have given me outside of the returns, whatever they may be 10 years from now, is the memories and the friendships. I mean, I've just met so many people through Palantir, and that's why I'm just like, you know, people say don't get emotionally attached to Palantir. I try to be pretty damn objective about the stock, okay? So I don't think I'm that emotionally attached, but to the company, I'm pretty emotionally attached because, you know, they've just opened up so many doors for me. So Arnie as well. Yes, Arnie, Matt Money, all these guys, like some of my best friends, like literally at 27 years old, my best friends are because of people that I met from Palantir. You know, it's funny. I had one of my friends from college text me the other day for my birthday. And she was one of my like really good friends in college, like in 2019. But I haven't talked to her in a while. So when she texted me, you know, it was one of those things where like, oh, that you know, it's nice that you texted me, but it's like we don't talk anymore. So it's one of those things where it's like, you know, it's just not that big part of my life. My life has changed so much from college. And now the people that I care about talking to, you know, are people that I interact with on a daily basis. And a lot of those people happen to be connected through Palantir. So it's just, you know, life changes as you get new interests, you develop new things that you care about. And really you need to bond with people over common interests, which to me primarily is the stock market, right? And Palantir being a big part of that. So it's just one of those things where I'm very, very grateful for the memories and the friendships that I have. And obviously the company needs to execute in order for this community to keep being built, because if the company goes bankrupt, there is no community. So it's always, that's why I'm so grateful for the company, because they have to put up the results for this thing to even work, right? You don't just get to have a fun community if you're covering a company that is not executing. So there's a big risk to the intrinsic risk to this community is that the community falls apart if the company falls apart, which is kind of, it kind of gives it a thrill because it's what keeps you on your edge of your seat every time they have earnings, because like they need to execute at the end of the day. And you can go through years of bad execution like we did in 2000,
in 2021 and 2022, just like Tesla did in 2021, 22, when they went from $1 trillion back down to $300 billion. But if the fundamentals of the company are intact, we can weather that storm. And it's important to be able to weather that storm together with everybody. All right, that's it. Thank everybody for being here. I'll be back at 3:30. As Kenneth says, hoping Palantir goes ballistic today as well. We will see with the results that we get. I majored in business management in college. It's kind of a useless major, but business management was my major in college. Actually, I studied in Palantir. That's great. Dude, I've studied more Palantir than I've studied quote unquote business management in college. Like my degree in Palantir is way more intense than my degree in business in college. And so we'll be back at 3:30 and see what we got going on. Word of the day. Let's do word of the day. Word of the day is anon, in a short time or soon.
Anon.
I thought it would be short for anonymous, actually. The play begins anon, so we should take our seats. The car is packed, so we'll leave for the trip anon. I have never heard anyone use the word anon outside of like referring to something that's anonymous. But if it means in a short time, then we will get Palantir results anon. Ladies and gentlemen, 3:30. I'll be live. I'll see you guys then. Thank you, everybody. Big day after the bell. I'll see you guys for the market close. Bye, everyone.